Collaboration is definitely one key part of supporting climate agenda. Without collaboration, no one can work alone, especially, in addressing climate change.
We just have a panel on that, right? Which I think is fantastic. First of all, again, we are all together that just transition cannot be an afterthought. It's not that we do the things that way we think how we're going to make it just. That has to be embedded in the project design. It has to be embedded in the problem, right? That is people-centric.
One of the biggest initiatives is actually to implement or to champion or even to spearhead the initiative to develop the ASEAN power grid by 2035. So with these efforts, the APG can actually help Malaysia accelerate the penetration of UPI to Malaysia so that we can meet their aspiration by 2050.
For example, in Malaysia, we could actually borrow strength with our understanding of what is good. We can actually borrow strength from what is happening globally, bring best practices to help move things in Malaysia.
The Silicon Valley Institute of Climate Change basically is an organization, it's a non-profit organization that looks at some of the issues that are faced by especially the Muslim world in terms of climate change, and what are the creative technology solutions that we can present in a collaborative manner so that the Muslim countries, they can work together on climate change.
I believe that the role of youth is really very important because they are the ones who are actually experiencing the impacts of the climate change at the very first hand. So unless and until they will not be involved in the policy making by the stakeholders, we will not be able to address the first-hand impacts of the climate change.
Malaysia Pavilion.
We are all excited to have this conference whereby not only the negotiation will be conducted, also the trade discussion between Malaysian businesses and the rest of the global businesses could convene and be discussing on how to ensure that Malaysia target by 2050 net zero nation will be realized.
The Malaysian Pavilion is very beautiful. Oh my gosh, I so like. And it's an important pavilion because we have indigenous people and very discussion, very important about climate change and about climate crisis.
First off, I thought it was interesting their climate goals specifically, also their infrastructure. They said that they were aiming to sell 50% of only electric cars, and I thought that was really interesting. And I thought America should take up on that goal as well.
Malaysia welcome you to the Malaysian Pavilion at COP29, Baku, Azerbaijan. Now we are at lot E11.
Come to Malaysian Pavilion.
Come to Malaysia Pavilion. Malaysian Pavilion.
Welcome to Malaysia Pavilion.
Malaysia Pavilion, shift for sustainability, climate action now!
COP29 in Azerbaijan.
Good morning, everyone.
All enabling.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us today for day 9 at our program here, Malaysia Pavilion at COP29. So for our international delegates, selamat datang to Malaysia Pavilion. It is an honor to have all of you with us as we continue fostering dialogues and partnerships that advance the global climate agenda. So today, we turn our attention to the theme, Climate Resilience, Sub-National Leadership. This theme shines a spotlight on the pivotal role of local leaders and communities in driving climate resilience. We recognize that effective climate action begins at the grassroots level, where those closest to the challenges have the expertise, commitment, and innovation to address them effectively. So through this session, we will explore how subnational leadership serves as a catalyst for transformative climate solutions, solutions that integrate local knowledge, empower communities, and strengthen resilience against climate impacts. Together, they form the foundation of an inclusive and adaptive pathway towards a sustainable future. So without further ado, let's begin our first panel discussion of the day, titled The Water Story, Balancing Sustainable Development with Economic Growth. So this session addresses one of the most pressing challenges of our time, ensuring sustainable water management while fostering economic growth. So leading to this discussion, we are privileged to welcome Muhammad Rizwan Hamzah, the Interim Joint Managing Director and Partner at Pemandu Associates. Joining him on this distinguished panel are four experts. The first one is Charles Santiago, the Chairman of Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Air Negara, Malaysian National Water Services Commission. And then we have Ong Tze Chin, representing Singapore's National Water Agency, the Public Utilities Board. And then we have Deborah Tan, Director and Head of China Water Risk. And lastly, we have Puan Haslina binti Amir, Chief Assistant Director and Head of River Basin and Coastal Management Division, Selangor Water Management Authority. So ladies and gentlemen, let us now commence this engaging session. Over to you, Rizwan.
Thank you very much. A very good morning to everyone in the room. Good afternoon and good evening to those online. It's very cold this morning, huh? I hope everyone had coffee already. I know it's the first session in the morning, and it's always important to start off with good energy. So I hope everyone is ready for us to start off. So my name is Rizwan. I'll be the moderator for today. And with me, I have my distinguished panelists here who will share a bit more about the water situation globally. Today's theme is more about subnational leadership, not necessarily national leadership. I think it's equally as important for us to understand one level down from federal government or state government, what are the initiatives that are happening, what's important, what's mission critical for the next 10, 20 years. And those are some of the topics that we'll be discussing today. So, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues and stakeholders, it really is my privilege and my responsibility to welcome you to this session today. So today's title is The Water Story, Balancing Sustainable Development and Economic Growth. Just a little bit of context. Obviously, when we speak about water, as we all know, it's the lifeblood of our ecosystem, economies and communities. For Malaysia and many other countries, obviously, this story is deeply personal. Our rivers, lakes, and coastal regions are not just natural resources, but cultural and economic anchors that shape our nation's identity as well. So water runs deep. It's not just something that we consume. It has economic impact, it has social impact, and it also has cultural impact. So these are some of the things that we'll touch on today. So I think we can start off. I think what's important here is I would just like our panelists just to introduce themselves again, the organizations they represent, and the mandate that they've been given by that organization, so that we have a little bit of context with regards to this discussion. Charles, if you don't mind.
My name is Charles Santiago. At this time, I chair the National Water Commission of Malaysia. I used to be a 3-term member of parliament, and now I'm on sabbatical.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tze Chin. I'm Chief Executive of PUB, Singapore's National Water Agency. And for PUB, we have 4 elements to our mission. So we supply good water to Singaporeans in Singapore. We reclaim used water to make new water, right? We treat it and we also make new water. We also tame stormwater in terms of dealing with inland floods, right, from when it rains very heavily. And our latest mission, we resist rising seas. So we deal with the issue of coastal protection against sea level rise. So that's PUB Singapore. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. I'm Haslina binti Amir. I'm Head of River Basin and Coastal Management for the Selangor Water Resources Management. It is for the state governments. And actually, we are the agency that is responsible to manage the water resources management in Selangor, either in the groundwater, coastal water, and all regarding to water to manage in terms of the sustainable way. And the mission is to ensure the sufficient and clean water for Selangor.
Hi, I'm Deborah Tan. I head CWR. We're a think tank based in Hong Kong, and we focus on unpacking climate and water risks for the financial and business sector. I too want to be on sabbatical, but unfortunately, all sorts of water risks are rising with climate change, and I can't go on sabbatical so fast.
Thank you very much. Before we had this session, we sort of had a debrief earlier in the room, and then Deborah was sharing some alarming statistics with regards to a rise in sea level and so on. It got me a bit worried, to be honest. But I think it's something that's worth sharing in this panel session later as we go into the questions. So let's start off. We have a few questions here. We'll start off with question number 1. What are the major water management challenges faced by industries and governments, especially in facing climate change issues? I would like to pose this question to Charles, if you could just share a bit on your point of view on this.
Thanks for that question. But let me at the outset say that the response to your question will take a 2-day seminar. But in a nutshell, I think our companies, government, including households, have to prioritize water at the household level, and as well as in the ESG applications in their firms, and the government too has to apply similar ideas of ESG in the way it's organized. Today, let me just give you an example. Since a number of our friends here from Malaysia, the Alliance Bank of Malaysia did a study on ESG compliance and the ESG applications, and they found out that in the area of environment, the priority goes to energy as opposed to water. Water is the lowest priority. Water is the lowest priority. Now, this has to be reversed. So in the next 3 to 5 years, the challenge is to reverse and make water the priority of all companies, whether they are big or small. This is really something that we have to look forward. And what that means is, one, we need to recycle, reuse, and repurpose, at the factory level, at the industrial level, including the use of water in data centers, and so on. Number 2, we have to start looking at rainwater harvesting in a very big way. And number 3, to look at reclaimed water wherever possible. I think this is something that we really have to do as a matter of priority. We can't say we'll do this next year, the following year. You have to do it now. Number 2, in relation to households. Both households as well as business have to start looking at water footprinting, which we don't do very much. For example, every time we go to a shop and we buy a jeans, and that jeans, to produce that jeans requires 10,000 liters of water. 10,000 liters of water. So if you have 10 jeans at home, it is 100,000 liters of water that you're walking around with. So we really need to be careful about the kind of expenditure we make, the kind of purchase that we make, in order to ensure that water is used less. Number 2, when we drink coffee, I'm not against the coffee industry. I am a big coffee drinker, but every time we drink coffee, we consume something like 120 liters of water every time. That means every cup. So that means if you have 10 cups, can you imagine the amount we are consuming though? And as a result of that, I actually increasingly beginning to stop drinking coffee though. Very rare do I drink now. Once when among friends, I drink it, but not like that 5 cups I used to have. This is a conscious decision that you and I have to make. A conscious decision to make to reduce the water footprint that we are so used to doing though. So used to doing it though. So therefore, this is something that I think we should do. So prioritize water in the way we organize our family expenditure, the family consumption, and also prioritize water at ESG level, and especially when you're a big guzzler of water for your factories, for big electronic companies and so on, you really have to start recycling. And I think Haslina will talk about the efforts that her office is doing, which I think is something that the rest of Malaysia will have to do though, going forward. I'll stop here.
I think there were some interesting points that you made there. Like, I never thought about not wearing jeans and not drinking coffee would help save water. That's part of our social fabric, I feel. I like to wear jeans and I like to drink coffee, but I never thought that I was wasting water. So again, there are some inherent challenges there because it requires a behavioral shift, a change in mindset in terms of how we view water conservation and so on. But I wanted to open up to the other panels, perhaps based on your experience, if there was any other points of views with regards to how we manage water.
I'll add to that. If you add a latte to the coffee, and it's grande or venti or one of those sizes, then it's 3 bathtubs of water from the milk, from the cow. Yeah. The other thing is if you eat a steak, that would be 17 bathtubs of water, right? So you can always sort of think about these things. You should eat a smaller animal like chicken, right? Switch to chicken instead. And also steaks are also very bad for methane emissions. And so, you've got a double whammy, water and carbon savings. But I like to sort of add that, it's more and more difficult to manage water now with climate change because water is really how we feel climate change, right? And so we need to do everything that's possible to conserve water and also to manage this stable supply of water. I think that's our challenge going forward. And the extremes of extreme weather is also getting more extreme, so the droughts days are getting more, and the rain is also getting more, so the drains need to be bigger, the reservoirs need to be bigger. But there will be like a time where we won't be able to build enough for all these things that are going to sort of happen. And I think we just need to be prepared today. And I'm sure Mr. Ong can expand on this greatly.
Thank you. So key takeaway from that, no jeans, no coffee latte, and no steak as well. And you're on the right track. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the next question to Mr. Ong. So PB, I think you're quite ahead when it comes to water management. We spoke briefly, and there's a lot of foresight in terms of how you do your planning when it comes to water management. I was very impressed how you sort of have a 100-year plan to manage the rise in sea levels. I think that's really interesting. My question to you is, what is your role in solving climate emergencies, and how does it contribute towards water security while pursuing economic development? I think that's a great question for PB.
So yes, I think, at the start I explained that PUB has 4 sort of mission areas, right? Whether it's a water supply, treating wastewater, reclaiming new water, right? Managing floods, addressing sea level rise. So increasingly, I see PUB as a climate adaptation agency because a lot of the impact of climate change is experienced through water, right? We talk about rising temperatures, heat resilience, but when you talk about droughts, floods, sea level rise, these are all water-related problems, and they all impact PUB's mission. So we see ourselves as a key agency in Singapore for climate adaptation. And I'll explain a few areas, right? When it comes to drought, what it impacts our water supply. And so for us, a big part of that strategy to deal with it is our 4 national taps, which is imported water from Malaysia, local water from our catchments, desalination, and new water, which is recycled water. And we see this as a diversified portfolio of water sources, some of which are impacted by weather and climate change, and some are more weather resilient than others. And we do think that this is quite important to have that balance so that we can weather any droughts that come along and to deal with some of these challenges that come along. But I think one of the biggest areas that we are concerned with when it comes to climate change, of course, is floods. Because we do see wetter days coming on the forecast, and of course, sea level rise. And for that, we have to put in place a whole series of measures to expand our drains, to widen them to a higher standard, and to make sure that all our key facilities have enough height protection so that the floodwaters doesn't go in. But we know that that is not enough. You see what happened in Valencia, what happened in Hong Kong earlier this year, in Dubai. We do think that on top of all that, it's not possible now to build drainage infrastructure for the extreme level events. And you do need to engage in the community to build community resilience. So just earlier this week in Singapore, we launched our inaugural flood resilience campaign. It's a bit of a funny joke. We have a character with a wise beard and mustache, and we say, be flood wise. Don't be, be smart about it, right? PUB issues a warning, heavy flood, heavy rain alert. Please go away, stay away from the zone, stay safe, and protect your property, protect yourself. So that's how I see PUB's role in dealing with climate change and helping Singapore adapt to the effects of climate change?
I think that's a segue to my next question, for Mr. Ong as well. I mean, the question was about solving climate emergencies, but it looks like you're already 3 steps ahead. You're preventing climate emergencies. Charles mentioned earlier that when we speak about the water agenda, it's always deprioritized. How do you make sure that water is prioritized for PUB, or how does that what sort of conversations must be had to make sure that there's urgency around the water agenda?
So I cannot agree more with Charles that the water agenda does need prioritization. And when I look around at my counterparts and my friends across the world and we speak about water issues, it really does need to be something that is put up higher on the global agenda, on the national agenda. I think in Singapore, PUB is quite blessed. I think we have a political leadership that is firmly behind us and has been behind us for many years. And they recognize that Singapore by nature is a water-stressed country. It's one of the most water-stressed countries in the world. There is no way you can support the amount of population and industry that we have on that tiny island of 730 square kilometers. There's just not enough place to store water. Just to give you a sense of how extreme we take it, right? I think as early as, as past independence, I think maybe early 70s and 80s, we designated two-thirds of Singapore as a sort of rain harvesting idea, right? Two-thirds of Singapore as catchment area. So we separated our drains from our sewers, and every drain in that two-thirds, it's a drain that collects rainwater. We do the hydrology mapping, and it all collects into the drains, and it goes into reservoirs where it stores the rainwater for the day that we need it. And from 3 reservoirs at Independence, we have now 17, just to maximize our ability to store rainwater and for a dry day. Right, and that is for us. We've done that. We go to quite extremes to make sure that we can extract and capture as much rainwater, make every raindrop count in Singapore. And so I think that gives you a sense of how we are dealing with it. And I'm thankful because it does require political leadership to be behind us. It is not so simple to just say, oh, it's two-thirds of a catchment. It also means that the government has to make trade-offs in terms of land planning. Certain industries cannot be in that area because otherwise the raindrop goes through a polluted area, it contaminates the water source. So there are trade-offs that need to be made. It's not easy. But I think as a very water-stressed country, the government was quite firmly behind this, and we had the support we needed to push all these things through.
Amazing.
I think, we're all here because we care about water, right? And water needs to be high on the agenda, but energy is the one at the top. So, but we also see recently that water risks and rising floods and droughts and so on have also taken out the power infrastructure. And I think that, this could be an angle to sort of place water high up in the agenda. Because, with sea level rise, coastal flooding, a lot of our power plants are also by the sea. Because our capitals, state capitals and so on, are by the sea. And other critical infrastructure like ports, oil ports, LNG terminals, petrochemical plants and so on, these are also all going to be impacted by tidal surges and so forth if sea level rises faster, if we're unable to decarbonize. So it will cause and threaten our energy security, these rising water risks. And it's time to sort of start talking about this water, energy, climate nexus together.
Can I quickly jump onto that? I think in Malaysia, we have this false perception. That's because we have so much of rain that we cannot have water scarcity, though. This is really false thinking, though, because our water comes from rivers. And rivers contribute 81% of our drinking water. And today, the rivers are very challenged. Very, very challenged, though. For example, our own study, SPAN's own study shows a good number of our treatment plants finding the yield, water yield that is coming out of the rivers dropping, which means that while there is water in the river and while it's raining, but the yield is dropping, which means that this is a sign of scarcity. This is a sign of scarcity. So we live with this false perception that, that there's so much of rain and therefore there should be enough water. And number two, we don't price water adequately or appropriately. And that's partly because, one, of political reasons, and number two, because water is considered in Malaysia, at least the government's point of view, as a human right, and therefore it should be given to people as a matter of right. So therefore, there are discussions on this that needs to happen in Malaysia itself. Number three, the ecosystems of our rivers have been highly compromised. And that's because our rivers today, in the case of Malaysia, we have a variety of pollution. We have sewage pollution, we have chemical pollution, we have pharmaceutical pollution. We can just keep on going, though. And this compromises on the ecosystem of the river. In fact, there was a recent study put out by JICA, the Japanese Development Agency, and I think UKM professors, where they actually said 6 or 7 of our rivers are actually in the Sinar Harian was sungai cancer. Yeah, sungai cancer. And number 2, in the site there was a big blurb that says that as a result of the pollution and the impact on the sea life, meaning your turtles, your fish, your udang and so prawns and so on and so forth. Today, there's something called feminization of boys. Feminization of boys. Now, I leave it at that because it's a controversy by itself. But the point is, this is a reflection that came out of that study. So that tells you how compromised our rivers are. And not only that, so therefore, that compromise reflects in the consumption of water that we do in our house and the consumption of water in our factories. So therefore, going forward, we have to consider the rivers together with the management of water in the lands, just for comparative purposes, as one ecosystem. It cannot be seen as separate anymore. It must be seen as one whole. I think this is the way forward on the way we manage water in the short run and also in the long run.
Thank you. I left that one with feminization of boys. I have to Google what that is and find out more on that. That's very interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And Puan Aslina, I'd like to go to you. What initiatives or programs are already in place in your organization, LUAS, to support targets set under SDG 6?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think I'll share my slide first. Okay, this is because when we are talking about the SDG 6, of course, it's about clean and sanitations, and it's very purposely for the clean waters and also the sanitation. So actually, I was from the state government of Selangor. So this is actually, LUAS is also established because of the water resources management. And also the pioneer in Malaysia, it was like we are the pioneer to establish, to ensure that all states will work together also to establish like LUAS. So we are established as the integrated water resource management agencies, which Mr. Charles has said that when we want to manage water, not only the river, but we must manage the land as the ecosystem that we call as the integrated river basin management. So in this case that we are implementing in terms of the management of water resources according to the basin levels. And from our enactment, actually, we have the jurisdiction to license all the activity because we know that all in the basin, we have a lot of types of activity that are related to water. There's sometimes the premises is abstraction the water, so you must get the license. So we can control the quantity in terms of the management of the water resources. At the same time, when they are releasing or discharge back the water, we must control the parameters to be discharged to the water. So this is when we say the basin, so we can see from the map, in Selangor we have the 7 main river basin, and the most important is like the lung of the basins is the Selangor River Basin, which consists about more than 60% of the volumes that supply to Selangor and also the Klang Valley. It means that Kuala Lumpur and Klang Valley is depending on the water resources in Selangor. So I think this is usually when we see the climate change, we can see that in Selangor, in Malaysia, actually we have the abundance of rainfall, more than 3,000 millimeter actually for Malaysia. So, but how we can manage it properly, because when we have too much, we get flooded. Usually flash flood we can see in Selangor, in Kuala Lumpur. But then when we receive less rain, we get drought. Because we have I'm showing the paddy field because the paddy field is one of the major activity that consume a lot of water. But how we want to adapt back that all activity must be going on, because we need paddy, we need a rice to eat. But then we must have to ensure that how the management of water is properly managed. Like we can say the water footprints, because the precision farming, we must try to do something that we use the water as much as we can to ensure the productivity of the activity or the product that we can produce. So I'm going to mention, this is the things that we have done for Selangor. We can see from the slide in terms of the water resources, what we have in Selangor. We have 7 main dams, we have the groundwater, we have more than 100 lakes, and then we also have another storage, what we call it as the a water storage or retention pond that also can utilize as the alternative of water resources. We only not depending on the river, because we know that during the climate change, maybe the level of the water will be dropped. So we must store the water during the high seasons. So how we want to store it? We must utilize back all the water body that in the basin. So this is called about how we must manage the basin. We not only see the river itself, but all the water body in the basin itself. Then we know in terms of water resources, we have a lot of water demands. In Selangor, more than 5,000 MLD is for water supply and industry. And it's not calculated also with the other activities, like we have the aquaculture, we have the animal husbandry, that also consist and need water for their productions. So this is the thing that I think, because the climate change not only impact the water quantity, but it will also impact the water quantity, because we will see that the river, when they drop the water levels, of course the concentration that discharge become more higher. Then it's a problem in terms of the water quality of the river itself. So this is very important. We can see in terms of the angles of the water quantity and also the quality, because it is correlated between the quantity and the quality. Then we are moving to it there. After we use the water, after we will discharge back. And the discharge point is the lowest point, is the river itself back. We extract the water for us to use as water supply and all the activity, but rather than we will discharge back to the river. So how we want to ensure that the discharge of the effluents or any liquid that goes back to river must be maintained in terms of the quality. So with the enactment, we can impose the parameters. So it means that, as Mr. Charles has said, the new initiative that has been embarked by the Selangor State Government for the first in Selangor and in Malaysia. I think this is the best decision that has been made by Selangor State Government. We have the zero discharge policy that has been gazetted on June 2024. It's just about nearly about 4 months. But for your information, Alhamdulillah, we get buy-in from the industry, we get from the stakeholders. Until now, we get more than 1,000 licenses that had been licensed for the premises, because the zero discharge policy, actually, we want the premises to recycle back the effluent rather than discharge back to the river. So it means that all the factories, all the industry must recycle back their effluents and use back to their production. So it means that we can reduce, but I think the technology is there, but some sort, maybe it will start with the high capital, but then it is for the benefit for the long-term purposes for the water quality. So this time also, when they are discharged more than parameters that has been designated, it will be charged. And the concept is polluters pay principle. If you exceed the limit, because we are licensed all the activities, so we know what types of the effluent that will be discharged. We have the parameters, and when they exceed the limit, we will charge back in terms of the polluters pay principles. So in this kind, actually, this initiative is we want that all peoples or all activities that have discharged to the river recycle back and reuse back, because we want to reduce the pollution load to the river. Because as we say that it is very critical to rivers in Selangor or in Malaysia, because the surrounding, especially in Selangor, because the surrounding is more than the economics growth is very high, and then from our record is that about 30,000 premises is such industries in Selangor. So how we want to manage 30,000? So this is some instrument that we are, the state government initiative, and we got a political will from the state government, and we hope that with this policy, we will have a good impact in terms of the water quality, because when we reduce discharge, of course, the water quality will get more higher. That's the point of that we want to result that this is the Selangor state government initiative that according to the Rancangan Selangor 1 or Selangor Plan, because in Selangor we have Selangor Plan is such like RMK. So every 5th plan will have their decision to make to ensure the sustainability of the environment, and also the clean water ecosystem that I can share.
Perfect.
I'd just like to share with you that I think the zero discharge policy is a very, very important idea. And I've been speaking to Penang as well, though. I think Penang and I've already started discussions with Luas on how Penang actually can do it. So wherever I'm going, I have to say, hey, follow this plan, though. This is a very good plan, though. I'll send you my bill for that, but it'll be there. But I just would like to go back to the original question about SDGs. SDG 6 is on water, the realization on the realization of the right to water. But I think what is important to note is, if you do not get your SDG 6 right, it will have implications for 17 other SDG goals. So that means on education, for example, on closing the gap in the rich and the poor, inequality, number 3 on economic growth, and so on and so forth. So therefore, I think SDG 6 is really, really crucial and should be prioritized in all that we do, whether you're in government, whether you're a household, or whether you are in the private sector.
Thank you. That was very insightful, and I think it gives us a sense of how intricate and how complex water management is. I mean, let's not even talk about national level, even at sub-national level, at state level, it can be very complex because of the competing priorities of, let's say, SDG 6 commitments versus priorities of the rakyat, the people, versus priority of businesses, and so on. So, you know, trying to achieve a balance is always very tricky, and it's important to have that political will. So thank you for that. Moving on, I'd like to go to Deborah. Deborah, how do we integrate comprehensive water management practices to address water's role in industries, particularly in high-demand sectors like data centers, agriculture, and manufacturing? And this is knowing that, let's say in Malaysia, there's a high influx of data center investments, especially down in Johor. Your thoughts, please.
Right, I might be here all day. All right, I'll just put the industries into the water energy nexus. So the industries that uses a lot of power and a lot of water. Right. So I'll start with the. We need power for irrigation, and I think you have to start marrying this with solar, not just in Malaysia, but everywhere, because. And also you need to up efficiencies, because water, agriculture is the largest user of water. Then moving on to industrial water, power is usually the largest user of industrial water. And we have to start thinking about power in different ways. In China, along rivers, if it's very, very dry, they've actually sort of like stipulated dry or air cooling for the power plants, and also closed loop cooling. So basically, you're using the same water as opposed to there's just a pass-through use of river cooling for the power plants. China's also been very polluted in the past. Also, a few hundred cancer villages, very dirty rivers, a lot of endocrine disrupting hormones and etc. in the rivers. But they've managed through a series of targeted response clean that up. So I think there's many case studies in China that we could learn from, actually. A lot of them have to do with monitoring, and including the public in monitoring, as well as obviously technology and so forth. But we've also seen some industries, like in the fashion industry, just completely remove water from textile dyeing and so on, because they're worried that in the future there's going to be no water. And also in some F&B industrial processes, just to also reuse the water inside there. As for data centers, yeah, 25% growth across ASEAN. Malaysia is massively expanding. That's going to take a big toll on both power and water. It's imperative that we don't power those with fossil fuels. So that would include LNG. And we actually push for renewable power of that. And actually those Googles, Amazons, and so on can actually pay for that through a PPP or something like that. Just to give you an idea, right, you're thinking like you're all using some of you are using your phones now. One Google search. So 50 Google search will be like one ChatGPT conversation. 50 Google searches means that Google will use 5 teaspoons of water for your 50 Google searches. But one ChatGPT conversation is half a liter, is this amount of water, right? So those of you having stupid conversations with ChatGPT, you've got to just stop, right?
I do that a lot.
Like ChatGPT, what shall I eat today? Yeah, no. Yeah. So there's massive. So you can actually also Singapore has implemented some water usage efficiency, so WUEs, PUEs, power usage efficiency standards, and so on. So this could help, right? Make sure that whatever data centers we're building has actually got the best standards for water efficiency as well as energy efficiency. And obviously, it's best if that energy is green.
I think there are some best practices involving data centers. For example, in Sweden, as soon as you, or even before you start having your data center, you need to be 50% renewable energy. And then in the next 3 or 4 to 5 years, you need to be at 100%. So there is a plan. So you have to abide by that plan. And then when it comes to water, in the US, also in European countries, it has to be reclaimed water and rainwater harvesting. So there is no use of potable drinking water. Now this poses challenges for Malaysia. One, we don't have a very well developed reclaimed water system in the country, and the rainwater harvesting as well. So it's not clear to me how the government is planning. The guidelines have still been worked out. So therefore we need to ensure that priority should go to reclaim as well as to rainwater harvesting, recycling as a center part of it though. And use equipment equipment that consumes less water as much as possible. I think this is something that should be part of the guidelines.
Yeah, I think all those big global data centers, they all have net zero policies, right? So they could definitely help on the energy side. On the water side, most of them, like Meta, Google, and so on, they also have a water positive strategy. So they're actually investing in countries where they're using the water to help protect the upper watershed and so on. So you should be able to tap them for resources as well. Yeah, we're working with some of them on developing their Asian water positive strategy. So where they would actually go in and create or help ensure that there's water for them in the future.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, Charles, I'm going to come back to you. You mentioned about water not being prioritized. Let's sort of deep dive into that a bit. So why does water not gain the prominence, although being the most important resources in various nexuses, let's say water, food, energy, water, agriculture, land? From a practical standpoint, if you're at home and if you had a choice between not having water and not having electricity, I would rather not have electricity. We need the water, right? But when we talk about a larger scale, an industrial scale and so on, or a government scale, water is always deprioritized. Now, you touched on this earlier. Could you maybe share a bit more why that's the case?
Well, I think, let me answer this question and then I'll tell you why we need to do that. Though. I think we need to make water a national security priority. I've been really focusing on this the last year and a half. Wherever I go, in all my speeches, I will tell you, water needs to be a national security priority. So, for example, we spend, fighter jets, 50 million, 60 million, 70 million, and we never use those jets, though. But water is something that you consume on a daily basis. So, therefore, you need to prioritize water. I think that is what is central, though. I just would like to also leave an impression on you that we eat more water than we drink. We eat more water than we drink. So everything that we do, you need water. This building requires water. Your t-shirts, your shirts, your sweaters, your cars, everything needs water. But where is the water in terms of priority at the lowest level? And then when you are leaving, when your family is going out, the mom or the father will shout, switch off the light though. But he will never say, make sure the taps are all closed though. And that is because energy is expensive and water is cheap. So therefore, this is the problem that we have. But of course, this is a very sensitive issue in Malaysia. Water is very sensitive. And we need to actually, some will say we need full cost recovery, but the government's view is that we need to provide water at affordable levels, that everybody can have water. But as we all know, that sometimes when you subsidize, and the Prime Minister of Malaysia has been saying this, subsidies are good, but sometimes, or most of the times, it subsidizes the rich more than the poor. So we need to find a mechanism where the rich can play full cost recovery, and whereas the people who are challenged, B40 in the case of Malaysia, B40 are the people who earn less than 4,000 ringgit or 3,700 ringgit, they will have targeted subsidies, which is what's happening in most of the states in Malaysia. So I think there's also a need for an acceptance in Malaysia that water cannot be taken lightly anymore. Just because it rains every day, most of the times. Now the drought is becoming longer, so the rain also is getting complicated right now, though. So I think we need to rethink, and also we should make it a priority in our school system. That means we have to start going to kindergartens, and as well as in standard 1, standard 2, and standard 3, so that we can educate them to start using water less, conserve water, and ask and make their parents and their big brothers and sisters accountable for the way they use the water. I think this is the way forward, though. We have given up on the youth, not the youth, the adults we have given up, though. Now we have to focus on the young people. They are going to face the problem in future, and this is going to be a very serious. We are lucky, but those who are now just 5 years and less or 10 years, they will face the full brunt of it. And don't assume that the water that we have today, or the rain that we have, is going to be there every other day or the next 50, 20 years, though. It's not going to happen. Things have changed. So therefore, we have to do things differently, out of the box, compared to what we have been doing, though. If we go back to the old models, we go back to the old formulas, we are designing for failure. This is something that we have to keep in mind.
I think, Charles, you've raised a very important point about the economy. The economy needs to be at the forefront when we think about water. So we should actually think about economic growth through a water lens, right? So I'll just share with you some things that have been done in China to reset this. So China, for a river, say something like the Yangtze River, to protect the entire river basin, for each of the states along the rivers, China has set what I guess we could call it waternomic targets. So they have a GDP target, but they also have a GDP per drop target. So they have a water cap target. They also have a GDP per amount of maximum pollution you could discharge in the water as well. So they're basically tying the economics to water. So it'll dictate the kind of crop mix you'll have, the industry mix you would have. How can you generate more GDP, but on less water? It also allocates water rights usage without raising the water price to each different industry. Right? So industries they want to keep, they would allocate more water. Maybe they have growth. Poorer provinces, they would allocate more water. Richer provinces, they think you could upgrade, so they'll allocate less water and so forth. And it'll go down by agriculture, by industry, and so forth. And so industries have started trading with each other these water rights. So I don't have enough, so I need you to save water, and then you sell me these rights. And a lot of these times, these rights are trading like 200 times higher than the water price, right? So this happened in the fashion industry, very polluting. They wanted to consolidate it. So they set new standards, so new pollution standards. They traded these rights. And so people who were polluting were like, I might as well just close shop. So then they sold their rights to everybody else who didn't have these rights. So it's quite an interesting system, and I think that this kind of polluters pay plus usage rights could actually also be applied by basin, across basins and so forth. I just wanted to share that.
I just wanted to share that I totally agree with Charles, and in so many ways. And I do think that this principle of right pricing water is very essential. In Singapore, we priced our water not at cost recovery, it's past cost recovery. We price it at the next drop of water, right? What would it take to build new infrastructure to get that next drop, which is higher than the average cost to produce water today? And the idea is that the price, it sends the right economic signal, not just to households, but also to companies, that this is the value of water, and you have to design your business model, your household usage based on that. But we also fully understand that this comes with cost, right? It does impact households, especially poorer households. Just to give you an example, right? Singapore just raised our water price by 50 cents. 30 cents last year, 20 cents in the coming year to April. This is not insignificant. But we couple that with rebate vouchers for the lower income, what we think to be lower income households. We look at the housing type and we give out vouchers. The smaller your house, your apartment, your HDB flat, the bigger the rebate on your water bill. And so we try to do that to set the price right for everybody else, for companies especially, and for households, for the richer households. But for the poorer households, we put in the financial assistance to help them absorb some of the pain of that price increase. And of course, just price alone is not enough. The message, the education campaign that Charles talked about, totally agree with that. I think we do need a lot of that. We have Singapore has a water save, make every drop count. Water campaign, save water, conserve water. This happens every March, tied to World Water Day across the world. We do it in Singapore, we call it Singapore Water Day, Singapore World Water Day, and we have this huge conserve water movement. We encourage not just households to do their part, but we also encourage companies to do their part. We give out awards to companies who show that they are conserving water, they have water efficient business plans and models and plants. And so that's how I think this combination of activities and measures are needed to help drive the water agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's very insightful. In Malaysia, water is very cheap. We're one of the highest consumers of water in ASEAN. It's not something I'm really proud of to mention here. But Mr. Ong, I think you mentioned something that was very interesting for me. You price the water based on how much it's going to cost in the future. I think that sort of language, that sort of terminology needs to be applied in water, especially in Malaysia. And that's a sort of a segue into my question for you, Mr. Wong, the next one, which is how can governments encourage the adoption of emerging technologies in the optimization of water usage? So let's say you price the water today based on what's going to cost in the future, and what it's going to cost in the future is probably based on whatever revolutionary technology that's out there. So then how can governments incentivize that in the future?
So thanks for that question. So let me just add one point. The other flip side of pricing water rightly is that you then bring in and draw in private investment. Because it now makes sense for private investors to come in and say, hey, at this price, I can make a return. I'm prepared to build that water treatment plant, provide this much capacity to companies, to factories, because it makes financial sense, right? PUB doesn't have to do everything ourselves. So you will know that in Singapore, some of our new water factories, some of our desalination plants are operated by private companies, right? Basically, I give a concession, they run the place, and they make a decent return, right? So when it comes to emerging technologies, how do we do that? We do it a lot from incentives. First, the price of water, if you set it right, it makes certain business models viable, economically viable. If it's priced too low, the technology is too expensive, there's no incentive to put that in the technology. So the price is an important factor, not just to drive conservation, but to allow for investment in infrastructure and pushing the boundaries in terms of innovation and technology. From PUB's end, we have done our math, and we think that it is worthwhile to give incentives for companies to really find ways to save water, because they save water, it saves me production costs, it saves me infrastructure costs, it works out. So I give a little bit of incentive. So just I think last year, we have this fund called the Water Efficiency Fund, that PUB that we set aside, and we give out grants to companies to do water audits, right? You go through a water audit, find out where you are using the most water, where you can consider saving water. We do that. The same fund allows them to even pilot new technologies, right? We won't pay everything, of course, they have some skin in the game. So we do it up to 70%, but we come in together with you, we lower the cost of implementation, and we work with you to pilot new water-saving technologies, new equipment, in your plant, in your process, in your facility. And we will even look at, even if you want to put in place a bigger infrastructure, I think we will consider that. We just raised the cap for each grant from $1 million to $5 million just last year. So that's how seriously we want to take it. So if you're, as a company, if you're prepared to come forward and say, hey, I want to really lower my water bill, really lower my water consumption, can I partner with you? Can you help me get there? PB will say, yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. I think there are some really good practices there. Charles, did you want to add on?
I think since there are quite a number of Malaysians, let me also share with you, one of our biggest critical problems in management of water is non-revenue water. We have a major problem with non-revenue water. The national average is about 37. The better states have less than 30, Selangor, Johor, Perak and Penang. Whereas other states, the more poorer states can have non-revenue water up to 60%. And our losses are humongous. This is water that is already been treated, but now either is stolen, perfluorine, or whether it's, some pipe is broken somewhere and it's leaking. And between 2018 and 2022, we lost something like 8 billion ringgit of ringgit loss of water. So this is $8 billion that has been invested and now gone to the drain. So clearly, we are now looking at alternative financing mechanisms in order to redo the non-revenue water, putting up pipes. But this is getting a bit more costlier because today the strategies changed. Before, it was always changing the pipe and that will solve the problem. No, now you have to change the pipe and you have to change the meter to smart meters now. The other day I went for a demo where it showed that the smart meter actually you can hear the leak. It's quite interesting. You can hear the leak though. So meters have got really smarter than all of us though. So they can tell you where the problem lies. So we need to really upscale ourselves and therefore we need lots of money on that. Now that's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, we have data centers and we have all these high-tech companies that are coming. They are massive guzzlers of water. So therefore, there is a thinking now that maybe we should now introduce something called the water conservation surcharge. That means after a certain point, you have to start paying more money. First, you have to do the reclaimed water. You have to install your rainwater harvesting. All of this must be made mandatory. And on top of that, if you use more potable drinking water for your factory, for your plants, especially the high-tech data centers, then the water conservation surcharge should kick in. See, right now, the way we deal with our tariffs, we are focusing on OPEX and CAPEX. We haven't even gone to the environment, the third band. The third band is sleeping now, because when we go to the third band, it's going to be very expensive, and then there'll be an outcry in the country. And as I said, this is very politically sensitive, so we haven't gone there. So we have to find a way where we can close the gap on the non-revenue water, and on the other side, for the big users, the more you use, the more you pay. That strategy. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think here we have to take an all of society and all of government and business approach. We cannot do this in silo. Simply cannot do this in silo anymore. Because it requires a huge responsibility on the part of the state. And I think here the issue is of leadership. So we have to get our government to start focusing and spend to get more active in these areas.
Yes, Deborah. Yeah.
Just on emerging tech, I think, it'd be remiss to sort of highlight the fact that the water sector is also a big user of power. And that, net zero water is also now all the rage, right? And there's also a lot of technology there to sort of make that possible. At least, I think, if I remember PUB's numbers correctly, up to 40% of emission savings from just that alone. So we need to sort of tap that in the water space.
Okay, perfect. I am being a bit mindful of time. Oh, sorry. Dina, yes, please.
Okay, because I'm referring to Mr. Charles, that the more you consume, you must pay more. Same goes to the discharge, because when we are embarking the zero discharge policy, it means that when you are discharged more, you must pay more. So the spirit is you must recycle and you must reduce the discharge. So this is the thing that it's just been started in Selangor, that maybe if the Malaysian want to adapt, I think it's a good way that we are imposing a new green technology, either to recycle back, and then with a good water quality that to be discharged. That's the point that indirectly we can see that in terms of indirectly economy, like we will have the other activities or other industry will coming up, because maybe a green technology will be more popular in Malaysia than all the, I mean in terms of the private sector, all the industry must adapt that, because when we use more water, of course we will discharge back to the river. So indirectly, if you are installing or you have the green infrastructure in your premises, we can reduce back all the discharge.
Just a matter of sharing as well. SPAN is actually now working with all our operators. We have 11 operators in the country, and we have actually given them this application called LCOS, Low Carbon Operating Systems. 30%, and why are we giving that? And it's free. We lease it, we pay for it, SPAN pays for it, the government pays for it, but it's leased for free for all our operators, because 30% of water treatment costs is energy costs. 30%. So the purpose of giving the app is to inform to get our operators to do energy audit. So you know exactly where the high points and the low points in the energy consumption. So whenever the high point is there, you need to manage it though. And there's a strategy to manage so that you can reduce the cost of energy and the less use of energy. So there are multiple things that we are doing, but all of this, takes time. Takes time, and also acceptance, buy-in, and also we need the human resources available as well. And sometimes the lack of competency can be very challenging.
Thank you very much. We're at 11 a.m. on the dot. I'm just being mindful of everyone's time and just want to respect everyone's time as well here. A few key takeaways from me before we go into Q&A. So number one is, when it comes to growing the economy, we probably need to wear a different lens and look at water as one of the enablers. Number two is, I think, pricing the water for the cost in the future, I think is really important. In Malaysia, it's very cheap. Water is very cheap. And as a result of that, it does affect our behavior in terms of how we consume water. Number three is really how we adopt new technologies to make sure that we maximize usage and so on. I would like to open questions to the floor in case there are any questions. Yes, please.
Thank you for giving me the floor. I have a question. I'm thinking aloud. I don't know if you will have answer for my thought. Is that when talking about water, it looked like, for me, a snake that is beating its tail. In many parts of the world today, the life is disappearing because there were no water at this time. In other parts of the world, they still have water, and we are talking about saving water. Okay, when talking about sustainable development, we are investing in our future. But today, life is still disappearing in many parts of the world. How can we manage both? Bringing water where there is no water today without compromising tomorrow. And then, have we today enough water to invest in reforestation of desert regions where life disappears at the time we are talking about? Are we enough water today to continue living and to invest in reforestation? That is my thoughts. I don't know if you really get my...
Yep. Yes, I think there are a couple of questions there. Anyone willing to take it up? Share your thoughts.
Well, I must say that the problem you pose is a global one, right? But we know that in terms of water, we share the water in the world, right? It's a fixed amount of water that we have in the planet, and it moves from one continent to another. It evaporates from the sea. It goes in the storm. It rains somewhere, and we're all connected through water. And so you're right to say that, is that going to be a problem? Do we have enough for everybody in the world, for all our ecosystems? I believe there is. I believe there is. But, you know, with global warming, with sea level rise, more of it is going to the ocean. The oceans are going up. Less of it is happening in being stored in wetlands, in our water, groundwater. All that is being lost. I think we have the solutions and we have the technology to solve some of these problems that you described. But a lot of it does come with cost. It requires financing. It requires leadership to come in to say this is a priority. This is something that we want to do for our country, our region. And I think with that, I think the technology is out there. The question is whether we are able to bring that to bear in a region that needs it. I think that's my answer and that's my view.
I think the problem that we have is that our governments are not prioritizing the commons. Water is a common. And it has to be shared between different categories of industries and people and interests. So you need to have enough water for, say, rice production, agrarian interests for people to drink water as well as industry. But at the same time, what we are doing is we are not protecting our rivers. We are not protecting our forests. Whenever you have deforestation, it impacts on your river. It impacts on the amount of water the river, the jungles stock. You know what we don't realize is we think jungles are all about trees, though. Yes, it is about trees, but these jungles actually they stock water. They hold water for you. That is the purpose of the jungles. They hold the water for you, but we cut it out. And what happens is when you start cutting away, then you do not have that water that you can use for your plantations, for your consumptions, and so on and so forth. So that means our governments do not really look at this in a very careful sense. I think this is something that is important. For example, you take some of the examples in India, for example, they have actually gone back. Some of these guys who have done very well in Europe, Indians who migrated, the diaspora community, have gone back to India, to their own villages where there was no water. And because there is no water, the villages completely disappear. People go to the next place where they can have water. So what they have done is they have gone back and they have actually rediscovered the aquifer. As long as you have aquifers, you can create water. You can create water as well. So therefore, we need to start thinking along those lines. But I also see Faisal here. Faisal is an expert on this area. So maybe he also can say a few things on this, though. And Faisal is our former commissioner of Spain as well. Maybe you want to say something? I'm sorry, you're the chairman.
Thank you, Charles. Faisal Parish, Global Environment Center from Malaysia. Yes, I think it is absolutely critical to take a whole river basin or ecosystem approach to water resource management. And if we do not take care of the catchments and ecosystems that provide and sustain water, whatever we do downstream to try to rectify the situation is not going to work in the long term. I think, I mean, an example has been given from China. They have really taken some fundamental steps driven by disasters. With the massive massive Yangtze flooding 20, 30 years ago, they just like overnight, okay, stop all the logging in the Yangtze Basin overnight, redeploy the people who were involved in logging to other industries. And you have to have these big, strong political moves to make a difference. Thailand did that also. They banned logging after massive floods almost 30 years ago and turned the forests into national parks and had massive ecotourism industry that generate 10 times more revenue than the logging ever did. So I think these are important things. Unfortunately now we're thinking of, okay, we need to think about reducing emissions. We need to get a lot of minerals to help us in creating electric vehicles. So now the latest target for exploring those minerals is in the forest. And that is going to be another disaster when we open up the forest with mining techniques which are not proven to be safe. And we're adding a whole lot of other chemicals into the system. I think Charles mentioned earlier about the issue of sex change. Actually, this is already, I know from research 20 years ago, that's already happening. At that time, it was not humans, but it was in the coastal mollusks. They were changing from male to female, female to male, because of the chemicals that we're using on the boats to defouling chemicals painted on the hulls of the ships. We're getting all of the marine mollusks to be changing sex. So we really don't know. There are millions of chemicals that we're adding to the environment, and we're only treating a very small percentage. So I think we really have to be concerned about the future and have a comprehensive approach. We have to look at the broader catchment. We have to look at those endocrine disrupting chemicals that we're allowing in there. And we have to really take a fundamental thing of engaging whole of society approach. And we have to raise up water. It is a national security issue. I think, as Charles says, we need to invest it as though it's going to save our life, because it is going to save our life. Thanks.
Charles is the moderator now. Any more questions? Maybe just one more.
Debbie, you know, one of the things that the Malaysian government is grappling with is also the concerns for even our own Bursa, for example. We allow carbon credits to be traded. In the water industry, in your studies and all that, what does the rest of the world do when it comes to carbon credits? Now, carbon credits is not really measured in water industry. At some point in time, there will be indices and perhaps valuation for this. But your thoughts on this in as far as trading carbon credits instead of doing real green projects?
All right, that's like a big mess at the moment. Okay, so carbon credits, I think, you know, it's hard when you create your own carbon credits and then you sell them to a different country, right? And then you are double counting your own credits, etc. I think, you know, that needs to be dealt with, right? That kind of trading of carbon credits. With water credits, I guess that's a question also. Carbon is fungible, water is not really fungible, right? So if you take water out of this watershed, I can't put it back in Brazil, you know? This doesn't work, right? And take it out of this watershed, I'm going to put it back into this watershed. So then the water credits become, you know, I think if you can create a credit system around a watershed, that works. But I think if you are sort of like bringing that nationally or even internationally, I think, you know, I'm not pro water credits from that front. Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can draw to a close. Thank you very much for your time, for listening in. I know 1 hour is not enough. I think everyone can go on and on and on. I actually had a lot more questions I wanted to ask, but we're limited by time. I want to thank my esteemed panelists as well. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and your thoughts on the topic. And then after this, we'll have another session, I think at 12 o'clock, is that one? 11:30? Okay. We're sort of like 12 minutes over on my clock. So once again, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Rizwan and the panelists. So before we end, can we have a quick photo session? First one with the speakers, and then after that with the attendees. Can we have the audience to wait for a while so that we can have a photo session with you guys? All right, speakers and moderator, please speak smile. Okay, and then can we have the speakers and moderator to go on the floor, and then all the attendees to stand up. And then look at the camera guy there at the door. Okay, make sure everyone fit in, squeeze in. Okay, big smile. And then for the video, please wave to the video guy. A big smile. Okay, thank you so much.